Welcome to the Explainer. Today we are unlocking the secrets of Astras, the god-powered weapons from Hindu epics like the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. Now, I want you to forget about simple swords and spears because we are talking about weapons that are literally born from divine power itself. To really get our heads around this, let's just start with a simple question. What if a prayer, a very specific, powerful mantra, could turn an ordinary object, even something as simple as a blade of grass, into a weapon of unbelievable power? Well, that's the core idea behind an Astra. So, before we get to the truly world-shattering stuff, we need to draw a really important line in the sand. We've got to understand what separates these incredible divine weapons from just, the regular old arms of the ancient world.
Okay, so here's the breakdown. On one side you have shastras. These are your physical weapons, things you hold, like a sword or a mace. Pretty straightforward, right? But on the other side you have the Astras, and this is where it gets interesting. Their power doesn't come from the object itself, it comes from a divine mantra, a prayer that calls upon a god to fill that object with supernatural energy. The power isn't in the arrow, it's in the invocation.
So you have to be asking, where did this incredible prayer-powered arsenal even come from? Well, as you might guess, the origin story is completely cosmic. According to ancient texts, the story kicks off with the god Vishnu. Right after creating the entire universe, he looked around and thought, okay, I need a way to protect this place from the forces of evil. And his solution? He forged a divine discus of unimaginable power, the Sudarshana chakra.
And get this, from the singular power of that one weapon, Vishnu was able to create an entire arsenal. We're talking over 100 different Astras, and each one had its own totally unique abilities and level of power.
Now, Vishnu didn't just hoard all this power for himself. He actually distributed these Astras among the other gods, which made each deity the master of a specific weapon. You could almost think of it as a celestial system of checks and balances.
So how could a mortal warrior possibly get their hands on one of these? Well, it was a long, hard road. You couldn't just pick one up. First, you had to find a teacher, a guru, to pass down the sacred knowledge. But even more important than that, you had to prove your character was worthy. Only then could you learn the specific mantra to call upon the deity and get the blessing that actually powered the weapon.
Okay, we've covered how you get them, but what could these weapons actually do? Now we get to the good stuff. Let's take a look at the arsenal itself. A lot of the mid-tier Astras were basically elemental, which created this really cool rock-paper-scissors system of counters. You had the Agni Astra, the weapon of the fire god, which shot out magical, inextinguishable flames, and its counter, the Varunastra, which would release a massive flood of water. The Vayavyastra could whip up a storm that could lift entire armies off their feet, while the Parvadastra, well, it could literally drop a mountain out of the sky onto your enemies.
But now we're moving beyond simple counters. This is where we escalate into a whole different league of power. We're talking about weapons that didn't just clear a battlefield, they could alter reality itself. This is the top tier of the celestial arsenal.
Just take the Brahmastra, which is an even more powerful version of the famous Brahmastra. The description of it from the Mahabharata is just apocalyptic. It talks about a huge sphere of fire, the whole earth trembled. This wasn't just a weapon anymore, it was an absolute cataclysm. And the effects? They weren't just for a moment. The texts claim that wherever this weapon hit, the land would become completely sterile. Nothing, not one single blade of grass would grow there for 155.5 trillion years. To put that into perspective, that is a period of time thousands of times longer than our entire universe has even existed. Just wow. Okay. So after you hear about that level of just absolute mind-bending destruction, the lore takes this really fascinating, almost philosophical turn. It suggests that these incredible weapons weren't just objects, they were something more.
And this brings us to this amazing concept called Ayuda Purusha. It's the idea that divine weapons can be shown in human form because they have their own consciousness, their own soul. They aren't just things, they are living, sentient beings.
Let's look at Vishnu's divine mace, the Kaumodaki, for example. As a physical weapon, a shastra, it's a powerful symbol of intellect, of the power of knowledge. It's an object held by the god.
But as an Ayuda Purusha, the soul of that mace is personified as the goddess Gadadevi. And in sculptures, you can actually see her standing right next to Vishnu, a living being who embodies the weapon's power. The weapon is, quite literally, alive.
So of course, this all leads us to the one big final question.
If these universe-altering, soul-possessing weapons were real, where are they now? What happened to all this incredible knowledge? Well, the knowledge, which was called Astra Vidya, didn't just vanish overnight. It was more like a slow, tragic fade. First, the massive Kurukshetra war wiped out most of the masters who knew the secrets. Then, a key survivor was cursed to forget the knowledge of the most powerful Astras. After that, the god Krishna himself commanded the last student not to pass it on because he was afraid of what humans would do with it in a darker age. And then the final blow. When the gods withdrew from the mortal world, so did the divine power needed to fuel the Astras in the first place.
And that leaves us with this final really heavy thought. We've talked about weapons that can rock mountains, boil oceans, and make the earth barren for trillions of years. A power that some texts say could literally erase a being from the past, present, and future. So the question isn't just about what happened to this power, but when you think about that kind of magnitude, is it actually better for all of us that it stays lost?